Wait, anywhere's where?
I was asking where to park. And the teacher was like, you can park here or here or here or here, or here. And I was like, so anywhere's here.
Aw,
I felt like a freaking boss.
that's good.
Yeah, thanks. Felt pretty good about it.
Ah. All right. What's up?
Hey,
How are you?
good. How are you?
Great. Grand. Hi, Rayleigh.
Home, but we picked up Eastboro.
Wait, where?
Eastboro?
Oh,
So good. Did you get the banh mi?
No, we got the noodle bowl.
You get the banh mi.
did we even go?
Banh mi. Actually, I've never had the banh mi there.
Have you had banh mi before? So good.
So good.
Has like cucumber on it. Some other
Jalapeno.
yeah, some other things.
Carrot.
Banh mi-esque stuff.
I've never had a banh mi before.
Au jus.
You need to have some.
Especially from here.
That should be an after church spot at some point.
How late is it open? Oh, after church. Yeah.
I mean, after, like, after this.
It's like Sadie.
We're like, what
It's
are you
night.
talking about?
Um,
Sorry, so funny. She can't take me anywhere.
What?
All right, out of here. You're done.
uh-oh, Finn. All right, Finn. 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 You want to fight?
You lost your privilege. I said you can't run, and you said, "Okay, Mom."
Oh, I think I egged him on.
It's okay. We need to go.
Okay. All right. Well, bye, y'all. I did get you in trouble. Yeah.
Living the most normal child Finn.
Hey, Baka.
Hey, Bacchus. How was your Bacalicious day?
Is succulent.
Was it gusculent as well?
I think so. I could say.
So we talking about more names today or what?
Yeah. No.
No? What are we going to be talking about today? Give me the sneak peek.
It's actually point 1, 2, and 3 are the same thing. It's all your mom.
That was good.
Thanks.
That was good.
I know it was.
I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Honestly, your level of humor is just like,
I know. What can I say?
there's nothing to say other than your mom.
7-Eleven. Make
I
a
know,
wish.
Why are we so old-fashionedly late, even here in our community?
It's actually so impressive.
That we're here like this. This is a lot of number of people. So was this like
Yeah.
you all the same way?
Yes. Yeah, we start at like 7:30 every time. What can you do?
This is how my relationship with my wife is.
So are you getting enough rest?
That's like me and Camden. Exactly the same.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Like the one that I agree with. If it's a yes or no answer, just a thumbs up.
Oh wait. All right. Goodbye.
See you, Shane.
What is this music video for?
My buddy Bodie needs guys 6 feet to 6'3". You can come if you want.
What am I doing?
He's filming. He's just got signed to Sony, and he's releasing like
Madam Web 2?
yeah.
Electric Boogaloo?
It's gonna make a Madam $1 million.
Guys, I can't keep up. I'm too old now. This is my buddy, Bodie.
I love that.
And anyways, he's got like a bunch of costumes and stuff. And he's filming the music video. It's alright, you'll see me at the Grammys next year.
All right.
Have like a in your little suit. Yeah. He just needs guys that are like our general like height and
Yeah.
build. Because he is also that, and then the people will like be wearing his like fake whatever he's
His brand?
The concept of the music video is that there's going to be like a bunch of like imposter bodies. So I thought it sounded right up your alley.
Baka.
Baka mode, dare I say. That's what I'm going.
Sassy.
Baka mode.
Dang.
Alright, thumbs are up.
All right.
That's fine. Just tell me what to.
All right. 7:15.
7:15.
I don't. Where's everyone, dude?
They went falling up.
If you build it, they will come. They'll come.
rest on us. Come rest on us. Spirit was moving over the water. Spirit, come move over us. Come rest on us. Come rest on us. Fire and wind, come do it again. Open up the gates, let heaven on in. Come rest on us. Come rest on us. Fire and wind, come do it again. Open up the gates, let heaven on in. Come rest on us. Come rest on us. Holy Spirit, come rest on us. You're all we want. You're all we want. Holy Spirit, come rest on us. You're all we want. You're all we want. Holy Spirit, come rest on us. You're all we want. You're all we want. Come now, Spirit, when you make my heart pound. When you fill the room, you're here and I know you are moving. I'm here and I know you will fill me now. Spirit, when you move, you make my heart pound. When you fill the room, you're here and I know you are moving. I'm here and I know you will fill me. As the Spirit was moving over the water, Spirit, come move over us. Come rest on us. Come rest on us. The Spirit was moving place I would rather be. There's no place I would rather be than here in your love, here in your love. No place I would rather be. There's no place I would rather be. There's no place I would rather be than here in your love, here in your love. Set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. I want more of you, God. I want more of you, God. Set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. I want more of you, God. I want more of you, God.
Dear God, just bless this night. Bless Logan, and we're just here to hear from you and learn from him, and just thank you for how you blessed him, and yeah, just give us a great time of communion. We ask that your spirit would just be with us in this time.
Amen. All right.
Let's go to Utah and come back.
Oh, cheer. Hi. Hey. Hey, dude. Good to see you, man. Hi. Hi. Whoa. I taught Lola Sessi Baka today.
Yeah.
All right, bye. Am I on, Josh? Can you hear me?
Your thumbs up.
Amazing. These are crazy. All right, y'all. Hey, Vanna. Hey.
I did. I didn't have my wallet on me. I was like, oh my god.
Hello, everyone. Hey, how are you guys? Good? Great. Good week? Good week? week? That's great. Good week. I feel like so much better than I did last week. Do you remember last week I was like, hey everyone, I'm like writing finals right now, and like I'll end this and I'll finish my finals? That was crazy. Do you guys remember when I was writing the word and I did this? Do you guys remember that? So I in the moment I was like, how on earth did I just spell and, D-N, and then I went to go write an A. Oh, thanks, Walker. Yeah. Look at that. So I realized why I did that. I took my Hebrew final that day, and I don't know if you know this, but Hebrew, you read right to left. So I'm reading this way, and I'm translating this way, and the whole time I'm starting at this end of the page, and then I'm like, wait, did I translate that right? And then I'm looking on this end of the page, and I'm going back and forth like this for 3 hours, and then I get in front of you guys, and I spell and like that. So I feel better today. I won't be doing that. This makes me feel like we're doing calculus. I'm going to erase that. That's another chapter of my life, but whatever. So, okay, Nainoa, you brought up something great after last week. You were like, should I be jotting things down as my brain is like rattling through stuff while we're like talking about this? And so Nainoa essentially said, like, should I be taking notes, and like, because we have this period in the beginning of the next week where we kind of talk about the previous week, and would that be a good time for me to ask those questions that are occurring to me, but I don't want to bring them up right then? And like, yeah, if that actually is helpful for you guys, if you guys are like thinking about things as I'm talking about them, and you like can write off on the side of your page rather than like, what is the implication of this? Or like, what about this? Or I heard this, and you're saying this, and what is that? That would actually be kind of a cool way that we can like time capsule last week and bring those questions into like the beginning of this week. So I don't know if you guys would like to do that. I know a lot of you guys take notes, but if you want to write down your questions too, that would be cool. So with that said, last week, what did we talk about last week? Oh, we did chapter 1 of Exodus. We finished chapter 1. We got to that last paragraph where it says that Pharaoh's going to throw the children into the Nile. You get the midwives that are caring for the people. The 2 midwives for an entire nation of people. What is up with that? We talked about the repetition of all of the Genesis 1 lingo in that little bit where it's like, oh, they'll multiply, and then they'll swarm, and then they'll crawl, and then they'll fill the place. And then Pharaoh's looking at them, and as much as they're increasing and multiplying, on one hand it goes, well, what if they increase and multiply? And then Pharaoh goes, well, what if they join our like the armies that are fighting against us? What if they swarm the land? Well, what if they try and fight us? What if they fill the land? What if they escape? And so you kind of see this. And then that leads into this genocide of the people. And then we kind of did that like diagram of like looking at the passage, seeing where it connects throughout Scripture. Was that helpful for you guys? That kind of word association that we did? Yeah? No? If you guys don't say no, I'll keep doing it. So speak now or speak whatever. But are there any questions from last week that came up? Were there any connections to the New Testament, reflections? I know we did some heavy topics last week. A lot of very serious things.
I don't know, I was kind of questioning how could God kill babies? Or firstborns. I know it's later in this, but just like, how does that match his character? Like, just, it's so sad to me.
Yeah, the killing of children. Yeah. We read a lot of these now, and I think in the West we're very offended by the pictures of God that we get in Scripture, which is okay. I think it's okay to be offended by a lot of the Bible. I don't want to rob you guys of feeling a certain way if something really harsh or like unjust happens in the Bible, and particularly if it feels like God is behind that action, I think it's okay for us to feel comfortable. And I don't think, I don't want to write over them and be like, oh, well, that's not really happening. Because a lot of these events are like very clear about who's doing what. What I will say, and we'll get to this as we get to the firstborn in 2 weeks, so we'll tackle this more in depth. What's really important is that this is a foreign people group in a foreign time. And so the writers of the biblical text, we saw last week that they're not solely interested in telling you what happened. That's actually not really their main agenda. And a lot of the way that we're taught the Bible is that that's what the Bible's for, is to tell us what happened. But we saw that they're actually very crafty with how they tell what happens. And how they tell what happens is actually layered with a lot of other nuances about human behavior. And so the biblical authors are sometimes trying to emphasize a theology about something than they are the ethics. That is one thing. It is also important to note that this is written for Moses' people in Moses' day, and not to our people in our day. And the value systems of those people are going to differ between our value systems now. And we'll talk about this later today. A lot of reading any text that isn't from your culture is kind of an act of tourism in some way. And when I go into the Old Testament, I'm touring an ancient land, and they have different convictions about what is good and bad. And killing children is one of those things that isn't like across the Bible, yes, this is okay and good. Absolutely not. But there are texts when oppressive communities need to be put down in some way. And in the biblical author's imagination, this is what God's justice looks like in this situation. So although that's not a very comfortable answer, it is the most obvious answer. And so we'll tease this out, and it will be more nuanced as we go on. But yeah, that's a great question. Like, these are kind of horrific stories. And so if there's questions about ethics and all that stuff, like, I hope they pop up. Like, I would be concerned if we hit that section in Exodus and no one asked why God just killed a bunch of children. Like, I hope.
But it's also not just children, right? It's like all the firstborn. So
Yeah.
it's like old people too.
Yeah.
It's probably like half.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I have to learn how to sit with the silence while you guys think. But if there's nothing, then we can go on. Okay. I'm going to erase the Among Us figurines on here, and I'll keep that one. Erase all this. Did you guys have any questions about Josh's sermon on Sunday? Any reflections or things that stuck out to you about something Josh said?
Yeah, one thing I was telling Austin about is when Moses was at the well in Zipporah, and he saved Zipporah and her sisters, and he feeds their cattle. I thought it was weird because Zipporah went back to her father and said, "Well, this Egyptian," he said, "Why are you back so quickly?" And she said, "This Egyptian helped us and did it." He's like, "Wait, the Egyptians think that's the worst. Herders or shepherds are the worst thing ever in the world. Why would he save them like that?"
Yeah.
That's the thought that came to my mind.
Yeah.
It's like, why would an Egyptian do that for you? And I'm just, that's what I was talking to Asa. I was like, isn't that weird that she went back and said this Egyptian said this, and her father's probably going, "Where is this guy? I want to see him." This Egyptian that likes shepherds now. So
Yeah, I love that. That's such a good reflection. Why would he bother stopping a dispute between shepherds? They're the bottom tier in society. If you look at who his descent in chapter 2, he goes and he confronts the top authority. He confronts the taskmasters first. And then immediately after that, he confronts the slaves. And then immediately after that, he confronts the lowest tier, which are shepherds. It's his descent from a kind of a kingly status all the way down to the bottom. So it's a theology of descent for Moses. He's the anti-hero coming out. That's a great observation. Yeah.
Austin didn't say anything about my observation. He just said, what? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Austin, I'm sorry. I'm kidding you. I'm kidding you.
Okay, so great. Yeah, theology of descent. Yeah. Any other ones?
Well, that part makes me think of Moses is like, the son of, and it's like this question of who is he the son of? So the fact that he is being identified as an Egyptian still in this space is interesting to me. It's like, what was it? Was it his tongue? Was it his speech? Was it his clothing? Like, how did he get identified?
His eyeliner?
Yeah, was this his eyeliner?
Yeah.
Like, how did he become, how was he an Egyptian to these women? Like, what was so distinct about him? And was he still seeing himself as like an outcast Egyptian?
Yeah.
Or, because he was like, he kicked himself out because he saw his people. It was saying in scripture, he saw his people being oppressed, and he like did something about it. Yet he's still being identified as an Egyptian.
Yeah.
Even though the previous verses, he's not identifying as an Egyptian, he's identifying as a Hebrew. So is it supposed to be flippy floppy?
Yeah. So Moses' identity is always one step behind, or one step ahead of what people think he is. So when you start chapter 2, is that my voice? Our voice? Oh, that's Ian's voice playing there? It's like when Val Kilmer plays Moses and God in Prince of Egypt. So his identity is always one step behind him. So first he's born into a priestly family, but the priestly family is like they're slaves. So his identity is one step removed from a Levite. And then he's given to a person in Pharaoh's house. And then the person in Pharaoh's house goes, oh, well, this is an Egyptian, or he's an Israelite. And then he leaves Pharaoh's house, and then he goes into Midian, and the Midians go, oh, well, he's an Egyptian. So you see this chain reaction of his identity following him. And then he finally leaves Ruel's house, and he goes to the burning bush, and then he gets his identity back from where you first began in chapter 2, where he's an Israelite again. He's a Judahite. So it's like the text is like he's haunted. Each step he goes, there's always something looming over him. Which we talked about like a few weeks ago. He's a liminal figure. He's always in between two worlds, and you're never quite sure, like, is he speaking for God? Is he speaking for the people? Is he an Egyptian? Is he a Midianite? Is he an Israelite? We're not quite sure. Yeah, that's a great reflection. It's good. Okay, anything else before we get into chapter 2? Yeah.
Quick one. I feel like it's not clear in the text if like when Moses goes back to Egypt, if the Pharaoh then recognizes him or if anybody recognizes him.
Oh, the Pharaoh that started in Genesis 1 or Exodus 1?
Yeah, and then when he like leaves and then goes back again to bring people out.
Yeah.
And I'm curious like if anybody there like remembers him.
Yeah, so that Pharaoh died at the end of chapter 2. But what probably could account for that is there was a change in dynasty. So it's not that it's just the next Pharaoh that came along. It's probably a new kind of family of pharaohs that it's just PR. Being a king back then is all PR, right? So the old king and all that stuff he did with the Israelites, that didn't matter and that doesn't apply to us anymore. So like we're here now, and then that would kind of account for. I can't put a finger to that, but probably what happened. Maybe, I don't know. Okay, Exodus 2. So this is really good. So Exodus 2 has kind of 3 acts and a little outro. And actually, I want to clarify why we're doing this in the first place. And then kind of the model we have at Everwell about like why we do these Bible studies is threefold. We believe that discipleship is split 3 ways. And then I'll put practice / tradition. We believe the modelship of discipleship, nice slogan, the model of discipleship is split 3 ways. And that in order to be a fully mature disciple in Christ is to keep three things in tension, and never forgetting the third. So it's the Spirit, the Bible, and practice and tradition. And so what that looks like is you go Sunday morning and you hear Josh preach, and although he will have a text from the Bible that he is preaching from, and although the Spirit has been invited into the presence to speak through him, the main purpose of a Sunday morning is the Lord's Supper, the practice of preaching, and the fellowship of the saints. Right? It's very oriented towards practice and tradition. If you want the Spirit, you go to pre-service prayer, you go to deliverance ministries with Mel, you go to community groups, places where this is specifically hollowed out to invite in the Spirit to work in you transformatively. And although Bible will be used, and although there will be traditions and practices that are used in this, this is primarily a place where the Spirit thrives. And then there's a night like this, where the emphasis is to work on our Bible skills, to work on how we disciple around the Bible. Although we will invite the Spirit in, we will do worship, we will pray for each other, and there will be practices and there will be tradition talked about. The main emphasis of tonight is Bible and becoming walking, living epistles that chatter about the actions of God in our lives. And so if you're ever curious about what we're doing on a Friday night, or what you're doing on a Friday night, learning Egyptian and Hebrew words and all this stuff, I would encourage you to fall back on this threefold path of discipleship that is really emphasized at Everwell. So if you're ever really confused on a night like tonight, like why isn't there enough Spirit, or why isn't there enough practice, why aren't we doing communion, I would like to remind everyone, getting to know the Word of God is the emphasis, but it's not the only emphasis. I think sometimes we can walk away from nights like these where like I don't feel like I have the Bible, and if I don't have the Bible, I'm like not a good Christian. And then you realize, oh, there's just such a larger world of discipleship available to me. Or I leave like an incredible worship night and I feel like I don't quite connect with the worship songs that night, and I start to doubt, like, am I experiencing God in these ways? And then I look over here and my spiritual life is very well-rounded. So I would like to imprint that upon you all, just kind of as we go through. All right. The 3 acts of Exodus 2. You ready? It's good. It's good. So a man from the house of Levi went and married a Levite woman, priestly class. So the woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a fine baby, she hid him for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and plastered it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds on the bank of the river. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. So we talked about last week, there are certain words in the Bible that are rarely used. And when those come up, you should be curious. You're like, that's a very unique expression. I wonder if I've heard this before. So last week we talked about brick and mortar, right? In Exodus 1. And then you go, oh, I've seen brick and mortar before. It's in the Tower of Babylon story. So then you follow your trail, and then you wound up there. And then you say, well, what is the author trying to communicate through Exodus 1 and this Babylon story, Tower of Babylon? So this part right here in the beginning of chapter 2 is one of those moments. So I'll give you the Hebrew word. Here we go. We're starting already. It's tevat. So tevat is the word for the basket that he's placed in, made of reeds and sealed with pitch. You're going to love this. Okay, watch this. Reeds and pitch. Some say bitumen. I think that's a weird word. I won't use it. There is one other time in the entire Bible where the word tevat is used. Anyone guessing?
Ask Noah.
Ask Noah. That's a great question. Noah's Ark.
I didn't mean to really ask for Noah.
Art? Oh my gosh. Too many languages. So tevat here, the only other time this is used in the entire Old Testament is used to talk about Noah's Ark. It's the only time it's used. And get this, it's made with gopher wood, which we're not sure what that is. I love Evan Almighty when it's like go for wood. And it's the phone number. Do you guys remember that? It's so good. It's the cleverest thing because we have no idea what go for wood is. Like no idea. So it's like the same construct. Take a tevat, make it with this stuff in pitch. Oh wait, I've seen it like literally this exact same phrasing, but it's different. It's take this tevat and make it with gopher wood and fill it with pitch. Okay, what am I supposed to do now? Right? I've made this connection. How do I go about this? I go back to Genesis 6, right? How is God using the story of Noah's Ark to tell me something about God or his created order or how he interacts with it? And what you'll find is in Noah's Ark, you get this chaos water. We talked about that a few weeks ago. And you get this box. It's not really a boat, although I drew it as one. It's really a box. It's also the word for coffin, which is interesting. And there are 3 decks. And Noah's up here with the spirit and the dove. And there's death and destruction and an undoing of the cosmos around him. And what Noah's Ark really is he's a man surrounded by animals, and the animals are peaceful towards him, and he has a good relationship with them. And there's this wind that's blowing in. There's this, we know the wind, the word for wind in Hebrew, this ruach that fills the place, and then there's the spirit right there in the form of a dove. What Genesis is doing with Noah is he's telling you there is death and destruction in the world, and God's good world has been littered with blood of innocent people. If you read the beginning half of Genesis 6, you get these like demigod beings coming down from heaven and like filling the land with blood. It's a very strange story. I'd encourage you to read it. It's the beginning half of Genesis 6. The land begins to be so filled with blood that God needs to physically remove the blood from his good earth. And so he sends a flood to clean it. And he undoes the justice, or the injustice that has pervaded his creation. And he has chosen from all of creation this righteous remnant as a new Adam amidst all the death and destruction to float on top of water in a tevat with something in pitch so that God can use this man to restore his creation as it should have been. And this is before we even know his name, that it's Moses, right? So all of a sudden in Exodus 2, the preamble to this is you have a dictator who is claiming that he is half God, half divine. That's what pharaohs were. And he's filling the land with blood and injustice. And no one's there to stop him. And he's throwing Israelite children into the river. And they're drowning. So you have helpless souls drowning in a body of water. And you have a young child naked in a basket floating on top peacefully, unaffected by the death and destruction around him. You're like, how isn't this the same story? This is the same thing. So what did we learn about with Noah? Well, God is trying to redo his creation with a new Adam to undo death and destruction and violence and empire and greed. And so like already from the get-go, we haven't even learned his name yet. We're already being primed about what kind of character he is in our story. He's our hero. He's the one that God is going to choose to recreate this messed up place where people have taken power into their own hands. So the basket's going along the river, and then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river. Okay, strange. So indoor plumbing was a thing at this time in Egypt. Like they had running water, you could draw a bath, you had like a running sink. Why would a noble person, daughter of the queen, need to go outside of her palace to bathe? Like, why would she do that? She's checking. PR? Publicity stunt? Could be. Could be. So what's really interesting about Egyptian mythology is the Nile River was seen to be as a fertility god. It's the god of fertility. I don't want to be too graphic, but it was thought in many periods of Egyptian history that this river truly is a river of life from this certain male deity, catching my drift. Yeah. Yes. This is seminal fluid flowing from the god to make the land fertile. So it's a huge reproductive hotspot with the place. There was these ancient rituals that women would do if they were barren or were trying to conceive, where they would bathe in the river to encourage a blessing on their body from the god. So I wanted to paint this very bleak picture. We have the daughter of Pharaoh going down to bathe in this river of fertility. What's floating in the river? Dead children everywhere. Yeah. Dead males in the water everywhere. So she goes down to bathe in some kind of fertility ritual, and she's surrounded by the blood and corpses of Israelite children, washing herself. So oftentimes, like, this intro in Exodus, like the start of Moses' life, is kind of like cute. Like cute Moses in this basket, like picked up, like it's very DreamWorks. But in reality, this image is actually kind of morbid. We're not entering into a genre of like a coming of age story. The beginning of Exodus is a horror story. It's frightening, where every element is, the evil is out of proportion with the good. To where even how Moses gets rescued is in a pile of dead children. He gets plucked out of the river and taken in this basket. And he's plucked out as this new Moses, or this new Noah figure. While her attendants walked beside the river, she saw the basket among the reeds, and she sent her maid to bring it. When she opened it, she saw the child. He was crying, and she took pity on him. "This must be one of the Hebrew children," she said. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, I love this, she's like watching from far off. She runs, and she's like, "Shall I go get you a nurse that could nurse this child from all of the Hebrew women?" Yes. So the girl went and called the child's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child and nurse it for me, and I will give you your wages." So Pharaoh's mom, or Moses' mom, gets paid money to breastfeed. It's actually really fascinating. All the male figures in the beginning part of Exodus are all these cruel tyrants that are killing people and committing genocide. And all the women are underneath Pharaoh, and they're doing these acts of insubordination towards this act of genocide, and they're ultimately like fulfilling God's will. So you have these two midwives, Shirpah and Puah, in the first chapter, and then you move into the second chapter, and then you have Moses' mother, who's the one who's like making this basket, and that's the thing, is that she's not disobeying. She actually is throwing her child into the river. And so this is actually like a really interesting way of malicious compliance with Pharaoh's order. Because she truly does throw him in the river, but it's just not the way Pharaoh expected. And like that's the kind of treatment that Pharaoh will receive for the rest of the text. And then you have Miriam, right, Moses' sister. And then you have the maid woman, right, that gathers him from the banks of the river, draws him in. It's an ancient feminist text. There you are. The men are committing these atrocities, and underneath, the women are subverting the expectations of this might makes right ethic in the Egyptian empire. And how they do it all brings about life. Everyone that's doing something is kind of actually just playing their role and not getting asked to do it and being the hero of the story. So like you get Shirpah and Puah are doing their job, although like they're maliciously complying and they're getting there so slow to the birth that the baby's already born. And then you have this Pharaoh's daughter that's just like bathing by the river. And then Moses' mother just tosses him in the river, as she should. And so these are all acts of civil obedience that are really malicious compliance. So we'll trace that later. So Moses' mother gets paid to nurse. I will give you your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed it. The child grew up. She brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses because she said, "I drew him out of the water." And we discussed that a few weeks ago. Moses means to draw, or it means son of. So this is great. So now we're kind of moving into the second act of chapter 2. One day, after Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and saw their forced labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. He looked this way, he looked that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Okay, so this is what you need to know about all of these verbs that are being used in this passage, and I'll point them all out. So Moses, well, it starts before him, actually. You guys know the Noah story. I'm going to erase that. Egyptian beats Hebrew. And immediately, you get Moses beating Egyptian. This is good. Watch what happens next. And when he went out the next day, he saw two Hebrews fighting. And he said to one who was in the wrong, "Why do you strike your fellow Hebrew?" Here we go. Watch this. Hebrew striking a Hebrew, and they're in a fight. This cascading effect. And he answered, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Did you mean to kill me as you killed that Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely the thing is known." And when Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. Okay, so this is a very interesting portrait that we're getting of everyone. Exodus is usually taught as good guys, bad guys. Yeah? Like poor Israel, and then the evil guy, Pharaoh. What you actually get is everyone's beating each other. Egyptian beats the Hebrew. And you say, oh, well, that's a kind of injustice. So Moses, thinking that this is good in his own eyes, kills one of his brothers, the Egyptians. And then he walks out the next day and he says, "I just made the world a better place." And immediately he sees the Hebrews fighting each other too. And they go, "Well, like, how are you to tell me that, like, this is good? You strike other people and you get mad that we're striking each other and we're not even trying to kill each other. But you, we've seen that in you." This word, beat, strike, is the word for plague. This is the exact word for plague. So this intro of Moses' story is this conflict of who's beating who. And it's all tit for tat. Like, there's no clear winner in this. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the story, you get God striking Egypt. And so kind of the portrait you get here is one that's extremely nuanced. It doesn't have a good guy. Like, it kind of does. Like, Moses is kind of our hero. He's our anti-hero. And the Hebrews are kind of the good guys, but clearly not innocent. There's a very nuanced portrait here. And then you'll love this. The Hebrews look at Moses and they go, well, literally, who made you prince and ruler over us? Which is so funny, because it's like the worst thing that you would want that person to say is literally God. Right? Who made you ruler and prince over us? God? In the next chapter, who anoints him as ruler and prince over the entire people? God, right? This is fun, right? This is irony. This is irony. And nothing is as it should be. So Moses, he flees from Pharaoh because Pharaoh is now looking. This is so good. Pharaoh looks at Moses and goes, "Did you kill an Egyptian?" Yeah, it's known, right? And Pharaoh goes, "Well, it's not right to kill people. So there's a warrant out for your arrest." So Moses has to flee. Pharaoh has some inkling of what is right and wrong here. Well, it's not right to kill an Egyptian. That's your brother. Why would you kill one of your brothers? You see the irony. He's committing a genocide. And he looks at Moses and he goes, "It's not right that you do that. Like, you're under arrest." There's this rabbi. that he's commentating on Genesis 4, where Cain kills Abel. And he says, Cain asked God if he was his brother's keeper. In essence, the entire rest of the Bible is answered in an affirmative to that question. You are your brother's keeper. And this was played out right here. Brothers killing one another. And the evil tyrant, although he's this like sicko committing genocide, he still has some inkling of justice. And so although this is a different Pharaoh than the one that we get in a few chapters, the portrait of this archetypal bad guy still has some idea of what is right and wrong, although he draws the lines. And we saw that last week when we figure out how do you draw empire around my resources, and how do I draw barbarians around yours? And that's all of human conflict at a large scale. But even this cruel dictator has some idea that it's not right to kill. Irony. The whole thing, irony, the second act. So he flees into the wilderness, and he settles in the land of Midian. Now, Midian's important. Side note, Midians are the people that sell Joseph into slavery. So Moses was a slave, becomes the prince, goes to Midian. He does the exact opposite of what happens to Joseph. Joseph is a free man, gets sold by Midian as a slave, and then becomes a king in Egypt. It's the exact opposite. He's upside down Joseph. So he settles in the land of Midian, and he sits down by a well. The priests of Midian had 7 daughters. They came to draw water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock, but some shepherds came and drove them away. They're harassing them. Moses gets up. How does Moses handle conflict so far in the story? Kills people. He's following in the footsteps of his father in chapter 2. He's following the model. Well, if someone bothers you, you kill them. And that's the role set by Pharaoh. So all of a sudden you're like, I'm not quite sure what to do here. This is suspense. So Moses got up and came to their defense and watered their flock. When they returned to their father Reuel, he said, how is it that you have come back so soon today? Almost as if he's like, this is routine that they get harassed and it takes so long to draw the water. And they said, an Egyptian helped us against the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock. He said to his daughters, where is he? Why do you leave the man? Invite him to share a meal. Moses agreed to stay with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah in marriage. She bore a son, and he named him Gershom, for he said, I have been an alien residing in a foreign land. So Gershom in Hebrew, I'll write this. Gershom means the wanderers. Plural. Wanderers, plural. He doesn't just name his son the wanderer because he's in a foreign land. He names him the wanderers. It's like foreshadowing. It's like it writes itself. It's so good that he can go in this land of Midian, become a shepherd, which is this kind of stereotype of the ruler, and then he has the wanderers in the desert. The story's it's writing itself in microform. After a long time, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned underneath their slavery and cried out. Their cry to help rose up to God from their slavery. God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God looked upon the Israelites, and God took notice of them. So before we talk about that portion, there's something that I kind of want you guys to notice about what just happened. So let me know what you think I'm doing. As soon as you figure it out, just tell me what you think is about to happen. There's a camera that's this low, and it's panning on a pair of cowboy boots, and it's walking in the dust. And then a tumbleweed rolls by, and then all of a sudden you hear a bird call in the distance. And the camera pans up to I don't know, my thought, I have a gun right here, and there's a saloon in the background. And I'm walking. What are you watching? Yeah, why do you expect that? What about what I just did made you expect that I'm about to get in a shootout? Because you know that's what happens, but why? What has made you think that? You've watched Rango, which is a Western. This is a Western trope that I just did here. And if I did this to most English speakers in America, they'd probably get what was about to happen. I'm watching a Western. So then if I know I'm watching a Western, by like the first shot of like cowboy boots in the desert, right? I'm already kind of thinking, like, I kind of know how this story ends. Yeah? Or am I crazy? Yeah?
So that's like what they would experience.
Yes. Okay, so this is something called a type scene. A type scene in the Bible. These are everywhere, like everywhere. And you guys are done with this. You've seen that. I'll write this up here. It's that important. Type scene. So what a type scene is in the Bible is it's a scene that is used so often that you actually expect an outcome. It's just a genre. It's a convention. So so Westerns were popular for decades, right? After a long time, the Western genre got very boring to watch. Because like I just said, if you can know how the movie ends from the first shot, why would you watch that movie? So after a long time, what happened was they started switching up the tropes. So instead of having the good guy wear the white hat and the bad guy wear the black hat, what if everyone's just wearing a gray hat? What did that just do to my story? Don't know who's good. I added a suspense to it, and I made everyone morally ambiguous. What if I'm watching a Western and all of a sudden the character on his right hand, he has a withered hand. He has a crippled hand, and he can't draw his gun. Now what's your expectation of the story? Moses. There you go. What now? If I have a withered hand, what do you think I'm about to do? Can I pull my gun and be the fastest gun in the West? How am I going to resolve my problems if I can't shoot? Another trick? Maybe I'm crafty, I set traps. Maybe diplomacy that's my best option out. This is a bad Western maybe, but diplomacy. So this is what's happening in chapter 2 right here. I walk up, I'm a shepherd, I'm a man in a foreign land, I walk up to a well, and there's a bunch of beautiful young women. If I'm an ancient Near Easterner, I'm like, dude, I've seen this like 1,000 times. This is the shot of like a single picture of a boot and a tumbleweed, and I know it's about to happen. So this type scene in the Bible is used over and over again, but the thing is that they'll tweak details to make it more interesting. So what if instead of peaceably a man walks up to a well and there's a bunch of beautiful women, what if the women are being attacked? That's interesting conflict. What if, okay, so the modern convention, someone walks up to a well and there's a beautiful woman, he gets married, happily ever after. What if the man can't go by himself and instead he has to send a servant to go and find his wife for him? What story is that? One more. Isaac, right. This is Isaac. Isaac's too young. He can't find a wife, so he sends a servant to go do it for him. What if instead of sending a servant, what if in this whole scene where I'm walking up to a well, there are two women, one's beautiful, one's not, I clearly want the other one, and there's complications with how I marry them. What story is that? Jacob. Yep, Jacob and Rachel and Leah, right? These are type scenes where the narrator's like doing that cowboy hat thing where he's changing what you expect. What if I walk up and I see these beautiful women by the well, I'm walking up and I go, how do I become king? This one's a little bit more obscure. Huh? This is Saul. This is like harder one. He walks up to a well and he's like, where's Samuel to make me king? And there's like all the women. He actually doesn't want the woman at all. He wants power. Interesting, right? What if a man walks up to a woman at a well and she's really promiscuous and he doesn't want to marry her at all and he has a different conversation with her? What story is that? Jesus. That's the right answer. Great job. Is your veggie still sticker for the day? Jesus meeting this woman at the well is a type scene that is being redone for you so you can expect a different outcome. This is one of those things. So you think like, a lot of the times when you read the Bible, you're just like, well, it's like ancient times and they got water from a well, like what's the big whoop? Like the narrator's just telling you what happened. But if we learned anything from the last few weeks, it's not just about what happened, it's what everything that happened means. There's a larger story, right? So this type scene, right? Moses walks up, but instead of getting, although he does get a wife, he gets Zipporah, but what is more important that Moses actually gets from that well encounter? Who's the person that truly talks to him?
Jethro?
Yeah, Jethro, Ruel. He actually gets a father, more importantly. And if you notice, he's had 3 fathers so far in the past 3 paragraphs. He's born of a Levite man. He's pawned off to Pharaoh. And all of a sudden, he finds his final home with Jethro, his father-in-law. And so this is like a crazy Western where like it's not actually a Western and it's like sci-fi. You know, it's like a completely different genre of thing. It's not a love story anymore, but the elements are still there. So type scene. Okay, enough about the type scene. So this is such a good storytelling exercise. Have you guys seen Wes Anderson movies? Do you guys know Wes Anderson's style? Okay, what is Wes Anderson's style? How does he move a camera? Fluidly. Yeah, he like pans over really quickly between 2 people talking, right? Like one person's over here, he swings the camera over, it's this person talking over here. You have the entire Grand Budapest Hotel, and then you'll zoom into one window, and then you'll zoom out, and then you'll go into a different window. And it's kind of fun, it's playful. So the Bible kind of works the same way. So notice how this whole scene is ending. So Moses, this whole story is Moses getting a father in the desert, like 1,000 miles away. And then all of a sudden, the camera jolts up from this like small well in Midian, pans out, goes all the way over to Egypt, and says, the Israelites groaned underneath their slavery and cried out. Their cry for help rose up to God for their slavery. God heard their groaning and remembered their groaning. And God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And God looked upon the Israelites, and God took notice on them. Yeah?
Sorry if this kind of goes back to the type scene, but like,
Yeah.
what is the benefit of like us knowing that it's a type scene? Like, how does that help this story?
Yeah. So it's there to let you know that this is not just detail. There's no such thing as like frivolous detail. Like if you're watching, I don't know, like I was watching Architecture Digest today, and it was great. Yeah, it was great. Who's the guy from Stranger Things? The sheriff? Yeah, the Grand Budapest Hotel. Little GIF. Is it a video or is it a GIF?
Yeah, just a GIF.
So, what you can do in art with the resources that we have is waste things in art. You can build a building and you can have like this sconce. And someone's like, well, why'd you put that sconce there? And they'll be like, I don't know, I just liked it there. Or you can write a novel and you can be like, well, why did you add this character in there? And they're like, he actually has no real purpose in the story, but I liked him in there and so I did it. And that's kind of how we think art works. That's not really how art works in the Bible. Remember, there's no wasted space. The writer can't just be like, yeah, okay, I'm going to slaughter this calf and extend out the leather. I'm going to dry it for like several months. I'm going to cure the leather, make it writable, make my quill, make my ink, and I'm going to write a whole paragraph about something that like the reader doesn't care about. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't kill an animal to like add in a character that doesn't matter to the text, or add in a scene that doesn't matter to the text. Every detail matters. And so if you're like, well, the setting's at a well, it's not just that it's a well. Like, setting always matters. It's like, okay, and I love the Star Wars things because I think it works a lot. If I have, in the end of Empire Strikes Back, if I have Darth Vader on this bridge, and I have Luke Skywalker, and underneath them on this bridge is just like dirt, and they're fighting together, but you know that if they fall off this bridge, they're going to land like 3 feet down into this dirt. How do you feel about the stakes of this movie? Like probably not very high, right? But what if you're on Cloud City and there's literally no bottom, and what's at stake here is one character falling to their death, and it's ego death. They're falling for infinity. What does that do to the stakes? Skyrockets them. So what good is it if Moses is just like walking out in the middle of the desert and he just sees a bunch of shepherds harassing this woman and then like clears the situation and then gets adopted, but then like doesn't have a well? How does that change your expectation about what Moses should get out of this situation? It makes it a little bit less significant. But if the author says, no, this happens around a well, and this is a type scene around a well, then I know that this isn't superfluous detail, that the author is drawing my attention right here. It's like, it's the difference between, it's setting. You guys are tracking, yeah? Am I being long-winded? Yeah. Walker, is that, you're distracted, okay. Okay, good. Okay, type scene. So this camera's moving back and forth through the entire story. So notice that the author's actually using suspense, and he's focusing in his camera, and he's focusing out, and he's panning all around. It's a very dynamic story. We read it two-dimensionally, and we're like, yeah, this is just what happens in the Bible. But like, I'm going to paraphrase these moments for you and see like, oh, the author's being really creative with how he's telling this, and things are moving around everywhere. Genocide in a river, an entire nation being thrown into it, and an evil tyrant demanding that more bodies be thrown in. One family has one child that they're just trying to keep safe. Put that child in the conveyor belt of bodies. Now all of a sudden, the river is acting as like you're moving your scene through the river. And the river that starts at this like quaint family's house, you end up on the doorstep of the palace, the last place you want to be. But it's still like one family. We move from an entire nation, one family, to one child, escorted to the palace door. He grows up, and then he's exiled, and then all of a sudden, you're panned all the way over to this desert place, so far away from the conflict that you're like, I've even forgotten that happened, because he seems like he's like in this settled life. He has a new family and a wife and a kid. And then all of a sudden, this haunting echo of these people crying and wailing underneath their slavery. But you can hear the refrain in the desert. Almost as if like the cries of these people dying traveled all the distance with Moses. And it's echoing in the background as he's walking through the mountains. So we see how dynamic this is. Like we're on a different side of the globe right now. But these cries are still going up to God. Yeah.
I was just going to show them.
Here's
an idea of what he's trying to show. So we see him close zoom in to zoom out. Right, this shot right here.
Yeah. Such a good movie.
This is what the Bible is actually doing. So it does shots in, it takes shots out, it makes it bigger than it is and less than it is.
Yeah.
So this is a trope because you see this conventional land right here, and then you're like, oh, it's camp, and he's trying to bring all these things to mind. The Bible's doing that with the well. The Bible's doing that within.
Look, and now it looks like Da Vinci's Last Supper.
You see?
Seriously.
That's exactly what it is.
Seriously. Yeah, he's thinking about art history when he's making the shot.
All right, we're done. But
Yeah.
this is so important because we aren't reading it as we should be reading it. And I'm thankful that we have someone on Logan that is saying, do you see what's happening here? Do you see what's happening here? Because they didn't have video, they didn't have bold, italic, all these things to make emphasis happen. So what did they do? They just kept on telling the same story over the same story over the same story. They're saying, this isn't important. But we're over here being like, oh, guy out in the wilderness, yeah, this is just what you do. And the people that are reading this, they're like, this is not what you just do. So that picture, Wes Anderson does a great job of it. That's why he said that. But does that make sense? Cool. You did a masterful job. I just thought.
No, amazing. I should have thought about that.
I was thinking about Rick. I was like, I don't know if Rick's seen a Wes Anderson film. No.
But even in their zooming in, zooming out, they zoom out on the table, and already like the camp counselor is seen as this religious figure, and he's like the voice of reason in the whole story. But it paints him as Jesus. It's clever, and it's hard to notice, but it's there. I'm not crazy, I promise. Yeah.
Is Moses in the desert? Is it desert type scene too, or is that different?
Yeah, so it's a type scene in that we just undid the whole slavery motif. So there's this whole type scene in the Bible. It's It's more of a trope than it is a type scene, but it's a narrative arc where someone tries to do something good, gets banished, spends time in exile, comes back and fixes everything. So Jacob tries to do good, banished, works on himself, comes back, fixes the day. Joseph tries to do good. You get the idea. David, Jesus, yeah. Paul, they all do it. I'll pick another one. I'll show you how. Yeah, so that's the trope. All right. Okay, chapter 2. How do we feel about chapter 2? Also notice that they end, chapter 1 ends with kind of this, an inversion of the end of chapter 2. It's Pharaoh's command to kill and God's desire to listen. This overpowers this in the end. Even if we're beyond the land of where the killing is happening, God listens from there. Our POV, our point of view is on Moses, but even from the desert, all those cries can be heard. How do you feel about chapter 2? Questions, things I skipped over? Yeah.
Are we to view Gershom's name, just like we were talking about in the last few weeks, as like more of a literary device, not more as like this is what he was actually named?
I think it's probably a literary device. He doesn't come up again, specifically. He does come up. I wish we had time to talk about that story. I'm bound by restrictions.
Is it the Zipporah story?
Yeah, it is, in chapter 4.
Oh. Do it. Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about the name of God.
Yeah, we got you.
We should talk about the name of God. We have 30 minutes to do the name of God, which I think that's worth it, yeah? Very odd text, so good. So good. All right, so we won't be doing this next week because we're going to be doing Good Friday service. So we won't be doing like this kind of interactive commentary because we'll be doing something with Josh. So I won't be there to talk about God's name next week. So I want to do it now because I really think it's worth it. And if you forget all the Hebrew we'll ever talk about in this thing, I think this is the one Hebrew thing where I think it's not even just like, it's important that you should know it. Like, it's God's name. And our religion, like, almost banks on it to understand the nature of God. So I'm going to spend some time talking about it. And it happens in chapter 3. So Moses is walking, and he's a shepherd now. Time has passed. He's at the lowest place in society. And he sees this burning bush. And a bush in Hebrew, if you want to know, is called a Sinai. You can see why they call it Sinai, right? He sees the burning Sinai bush. But it's not called Sinai yet. It's called desert mountain. They're called the same things. Mount Horeb, Mount Sinai. They're interchangeable. But we're in the book of names, so we should pay attention to names, right? So he's in desert mountain, Mount Horeb. And he's walking through, and he sees this burning bush, this burning Sinai that's on fire, but it's not consumed. He walks up to it, and you have this huge scene where he's like, well, what are you? And then Val Kilmer goes, I am the God of your father. Singular. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Giving more credence to Moses' desire for a father figure in his life. So he says, come no closer, like take off your shoes, disrobe. So we have this burning tree on this mountain, and now Moses is undressing. Kind of sounds like our Adam and Eve characters, right? I have observed the misery of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry on account of their taskmasters. Indeed, I know their suffering. And I have come down to deliver them from the Egyptians and to bring them out of that land to a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the country of the Canaanites and the Stalactites, and the cry of the Israelites has now come to me. I have also seen how the Egyptians oppress them. Go now, I am sending you to Pharaoh. So we have the call of the hero. And Moses is he's reluctant to accept this call. This is great. Moses says to God, if I come to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? So this is, I think it's such a missed point that a lot of preachers do when they talk about this story. How they paint this whole interaction at the burning bush is like Moses doesn't have enough faith. Like if the God of the universe was to like come down to you and tell you to do something, I would never say no. Like that's not what is happening here at all. Moses is not encountering the God of the universe as he knows it. Who's the God of his universe? Ra. It's the sun god in Egypt. Or it's whatever god Jethro is worshiping. Right? We know he's a priest. Moses is not encountering the God of his universe. What he's encountering in his eyes, and Moses' eyes, is a hillside deity of a mountain. And this is really common in like polytheistic cultures, where you have your main pantheon of gods. Think like Zeus and like Aphrodite and the Big 12 on Mount Olympus. But also like there's a god in this podium, and that's like a spirit. And it wouldn't be weird if this podium started talking to me one day and being like, hey, I have this plan where I want to take down Zeus. And I'd say to this god of this podium, like, yeah, buddy, like, good luck with that one. This is what's happening here with Moses. I'm serious. He goes up to this hillside, this random hillside. There's no people around, so far from civilization. And this hillside deity is talking to him through this burning bush. And a lot of like pastors will be like, well, if a bush talked to me and all I would, that's not what's happening. Moses is genuinely convinced this is some random hillside deity. And even when the deity proclaims himself, like, I'm the God of your fathers, the slaves? Like, you're the God of slaves, and you want me to go bring justice on the sun? Like, I won't do that. So Moses' his hesitation here is very justified. And I think we remove the dignity from Moses in this situation by pastors being like, I would do this. No, you would not if you were Moses. You would not charge the sun with a staff that turns into a snake. Like, no. The suspicion that Moses has about this deity is real, is true. So he goes up to him, and he's like, who are you? And this is so key to understanding God. And Hebrew also. I should explain this first. English is a weird language. Is there anyone where English is their second language in the room? What was weird about learning English when you first started? Backwards? How so?
It's kind of like our language is like Hebrew, ours is a lot like
Mm-hmm.
Hebrew. So, it's hard to explain. But I'm trying to say like we have a lot of like different words.
Mm-hmm.
To explain, like in English, there's one word that is like,
Yeah.
for example, like love.
Yeah.
There's just like the word love, but we have different words for like.
Yeah.
How to be like for people is different, for food is different, for like.
Yeah.
More poetic.
So like even the philosophy of the language, how they view love, was a learning curve when you're learning English. So English is super weird. And to like showcase, you see this weirdness all the time, but because it's like the water you swim in, you don't notice. Why on earth do we capitalize the word I? Like if you've ever learned another language, like in French, je, Spanish, yo, none of these are capitalized. It is actually weird. We're one of the only languages in the world where the personal pronoun is capitalized. What do you think that tells us about how we think about ourselves in English? In French, you say, je m'appelle, which means I call myself. I call myself this name. Well, my name is. What's the difference between saying I call myself this and my name is this? What's the difference in that? Possession. And definition of yourself as that thing. My name is versus I call myself this. This is way more fluid. This is what I'm known as. Versus my name is this. My birth-given Christian name is this. really odd. And we don't think about this ever because it's the language we speak. This is going to be important when I talk about this next part, because there are weirder things and there's bigger things. You were expecting me to come out on that side? I can do that, you know. Okay. So this, I'm going to lose half of you guys right now, and I know it. So how we think about tense in our language, and this is going to pay off, I promise you. If I'm talking about an event that's happening in time, I think about time on a timeline, yeah? Where the past is on the left, future's on the right. And if I want to describe something in the past, I say it was that thing. And it's a definitive moment. Or I can even say it was being that way. And that's like a passive, and your English teachers tell you not to do this. Or you can say, in the present, I am this thing right now, this is happening as we speak. And that's different from I will be. Or, even more different, I will become. Because now that whole idea of I am becoming something else is intransitive, right? Let's ignore that word. I was, I will be, I am. And that's how we think about time and language. Do I have you still? Because I'm about to lose all you all. So cool. All right, in Hebrew, that is not how you think about things at all. It doesn't have anything called tense. It has this thing called aspect. Aspect means there are two options with how you exist in the world. You're either outside or you're inside. Not like space, like not I'm inside here and I'm outside there, but in time. I'm either inside time experiencing it, or I'm outside time and I'm observing it. Okay, all the hands raised, yeah.
So, if, like, are there things that help us, like, if when they see outside of time, is that, like, generally used for, like, past tense?
Yep, exactly.
Oh.
So if I'm outside time, I can be an objective observer. It was this way. I was this way. This thing happened. I'm all outside of it. Or I can be inside the event, and I can say things like this. It may. I am. I don't know if I am. Who knows in a few minutes? I will be. I could. You're getting the picture. I could. So you have outside and inside perspective. Outside and inside aspect. Do I have you all? Did I lose anyone? Yeah.
Like, in reference to what? Like, I guess what you said, just like reading it?
Just life. So this moment that I'm in right now, I can't ever describe it in this way. I have to describe it as like I'm inside the event because it's still happening and I don't know.
Can you like give an example of like if you were talking about a situation, how you would talk about it in tense in English and how you would talk about it if you were talking about it in the aspect instead of tense?
So if I'm inside, well, I'll read you several. So the Israelites groaned. That's past tense. That happened. It's outside.
But if you experienced it personally, can you speak from the outside or not?
So
You're not currently in it.
even if I experience it, the event is over. So I'm outside now. So even if it's my personal autobiography, I'm going to describe the whole thing as outside. But if I'm talking about my hopes, dreams, what's happening right now, what I'm eating, like anything that's happening in the present or in the future, it's inside. Okay, so this is, I promise there's payoff with this. So when God gives his name, he says, my name is Yahweh. Spelled like this. This is not a noun. God's name is a verb. God is not something. God is something where his entire being is described as his doing of that thing. We're getting really esoteric. So God is not a noun. He's not a being, per se. He's a being that is so much larger than our capacity to understand him. You can only describe him by an action. So Moses comes to Yahweh, and he says, "Well, who should I say sent me in this terrible journey to fight the sun?" And Yahweh goes, "I am that I am." But notice the way that that's phrased is inside this aspect. It could also be, "I will be that I will be." Or it could be, "I may be that I may be." Or it could be, "I could be that I could be." And Yahweh's name is Yeh. And you're like, "What? I was lied to. I thought it was Yahweh." So watch this. So his name, this is I am. It's Yahweh's name. He says, "I am Yeh," which in Hebrew, I am. So when you tell people about me, don't say I am, say he is. Right? I lost you guys. What? Oh, I'm getting there. Yeah. So Moses goes, like, Yahweh, he goes, God, right? And God is not his name. His name is not God. He has no name tag in heaven that says Mr. God. That is not a name. Not a name. His name. So what Yeh means, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, how kind of Hebrew works. There's roots of things. This is the word that literally just means to be or to live. So how this being beyond our capacity to understand describes himself is, I am, or I live, or I occur, or I happen to be. My existence is so much larger than your ability to understand me that I just exist. I am. When you tell people about me, don't say, like Moses wouldn't go, "Who sent you?" Or Pharaoh wouldn't say to Moses, "Who sent you?" And Moses would say, "I am." You see, that's a little bit redundant. You'd say, Yahweh, which means he is. So anytime I refer to God, I'm not saying I am when I say praise Yahweh. I say praise he is. Praise he is. Because his being and I don't like using this word, but truly, his omnipotence in the text can only be described by existence itself. That is who he is. So Moses walks up to this random hillside deity. "Why should I pay attention to you? Like, I'm not fighting the sun." And he says, "You don't understand. I am. I am. I am that I am. I'm broader than your conceptions of what it means to be a god. And you will go to war on my behalf."
Does Moses hear that and just be like, what?
Is Moses still be like, "Okay, Bush, whatever"?
Well, I think Moses, I don't know. I don't want to give Moses more emotion than the text tells, but he's not on board right away, is he? No. He goes, "I can't do that." He says, "I'm heavy of tongue," and a lot of people are like, "Well, he has a speech impediment." That's an idiom for I don't know the language. I'm like, it's like, you know the word barbarian? You know where the word barbarian comes from? The Greeks thought that everyone that didn't speak Latin or Greek sounded like bar, so they named them barbarians. I'm heavy of tongue, I bar. I can't speak Hebrew, I can't lead these Hebrews. And he's like, "Oh, well, that's great, because my name is to be, so I'll be with your tongue." And he goes, "Dang it." He goes, what else do you have? And he's like, well, stick out your rod. And remember, the divine symbol of authority in ancient Egypt was a bent cobra perching up, like ready about to strike. Throw your staff on the ground, and it becomes a snake. Then Yahweh says, pick it up, and it becomes a staff. And then he says, well, what if they don't believe me then? Like, you never know. Like, they can do that too, and they do that too, and that's an important thing. We'll come to that later. Stick your hand in your pocket, take it out, and translations have leprosy. Leprosy, like, did not exist back then in this period of time. What this disease actually is albinism. He sticks his hand in, and it turns white as snow. Yeah. So anytime you read leprosy, I don't know why translations keep that. It's usually like a skin rash, or it's like albinism. Later, Miriam sees that Moses married a Cushite wife, and Cushites that's Ethiopia, so she has a lot of melanin, right? She's black, and God punishes Miriam with leprosy, and she turns absolutely white, like translucent white, because she just made fun of Moses' wife's skin color as a Cushite, because she's black. So God says, okay, well, if you don't like how that looks, albino. It's such a good little portion. So he sticks his hand in his coat, takes it out. It's white as snow. And then the last thing is he pours the blood on the ground. And notice, all these tricks are supposed to be for convincing the Israelites that Yahweh is his God. These aren't for Pharaoh. None of these are for Pharaoh. They're actually to convince Israel that Yahweh is their God. And that will, obviously, that affects Miriam very much later on. So Yahweh, and I think it's important. Remember a few weeks ago when we were talking about omnipotence, I was like, I don't think it's super helpful to view God as a calloused outside observer, that he's all-knowing and he's all whatever, and he's so far removed from the present that he's just like a string of data when we think about how he interacts with us. When in the Hebrew, how Yahweh is defined is he's a conjugatable being, but he's so involved in the essence in the lives of human beings that he has to be defined inside time. He is and he will be that thing for us. It's both. And so Moses says, like, well, who will be with me? Moses is responding with, I will be with you, and also I am with you. I'm both. And that will perpetually be the case as long as you call on my name. That I am not, it was. I am, and I will be that thing. There's no distinguishing me from being outside of time. Yeah?
The Greek does this kind of too, right? With chronos and kairos.
Oh, yeah, kairos.
Chronos is like time, it's more of the outside. It was a good time, but you never explain it like that. Like a kairos time is like the quality of time that you're having. So chronos is like 11 a.m. I met with Josh. Then if you talk to somebody, you're like, I had a really good meeting with Josh. It's different. Never heard that. I had really fun, like it was a good meeting. That's the quality of the time. So every time when Jesus comes onto the scene, he always says that the kingdom of God is at hand, or now is at hand. It's always exactly the same thing as I am that I am. Like Jesus is like invoking this thing, and it's funny because Greek tracks with it, in which English doesn't. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the difference between an occasion and like a time on a timeline. Like an occasion's fun. It's like a kickback. Chronos is like a doctor's office visit.
That's why English is not a very good Christian language. But
No.
So is the point kind of that to be inside of the aspect, you have to be personally experiencing it in the present, and so for God to make himself at least he is personally experiencing everybody's present at the same time.
Yeah, or at least he's existing alongside of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, why, and this Yeah. That's kind of like, he seems to be above that throughout the rest of the scripture. Like,
Yeah.
don't use these little things, or, I don't need to prove these little acts or things to prove that I'm God. It's
Yeah.
But in this case, it's like, oh, here, like, this is how I know I'm God, by throwing these on the ground and turning into a snake.
Yeah. Oh man. God kind of does do this a lot, actually. I don't think we notice it as much. There's this story of Jacob makes magic wands in Genesis. I kid you not. He makes magic wands because he really wants these goats to reproduce, and because he wants it's the spotted versus the clean goats. And so Jacob will make a magic wand and stick it in the food troughs before they mate. And so I think there's a good balance of both. There is parlor tricks, there is not. I think it does kind of hint at an assumption about how God is willing to work. I think because we're thinking of God as such a large being, an I am being, we expect spectacle and miracle. And we do get that in the Bible, but I think those are mainly exceptions. I think a lot of what you get in the Bible about Yahweh and his character is he's thoroughly committed to using human beings to do his bidding. So I actually kind of did want to hit on this. There is, I think Moses in the story of him exposes a bias we have about how, God should save the day like Superman. And there should be these plagues to get us out of this situation. But if you actually read the story very carefully, he's concerned with finding people that will do his bidding for him. And he's concerned about finding people that will work on his behalf. And so all the women in the story up to this point have been subverting evil by existing. And notice, there's a point in chapter 2 where Moses looks left and he looks right. And he doesn't find anyone, so he kills the Egyptian. How that's been read in church history in the recent years is he's looking to find if there's any witnesses. I look left, I look right. Is there anyone that's going to find me to do this? And then I'll kill. I think that isn't really the heart of the text. I think it's more, I look left and I look right and I don't find anyone to help. So I step in and do something about it. And although he doesn't do it in the way that God has ordained, he can't kill like that. That is the character quality that God is looking for, someone to actually act on his behalf. So it's like people that are like, oh God, during church there will be a church group and they'll be like, God, bring down your kingdom right now in Orange County, right? And then they all leave church and then they go to they go to brunch, and it's a trope. They're super rude to the waiter and they don't tip, right? And then they leave and they cause a ruckus, and then you get viral videos on Reddit. And it's so ironic because we're like, God, we need you to work in this way, and we expect some miracle when in reality the entire time God has ordained and given us the authority to be his miracles, enacting God's will in the church. Teresa of Avila has this amazing quote. She says, Jesus has no hands and no feet on creation anymore. The church are his hands and feet now. All the miracles that we expect God to do have been given over for the church to make. And so it's our responsibility to use parlor tricks to trick a snake. You can trick the devil. That is not sin. And so, yeah, he's pulling these tricks on his people. Yeah.
Building off this question, is there significance? Because I've always seen it as these are for the Egyptians and Pharaoh specifically to believe. Because you see the snake and you see the blood of the Nile. You don't really see the albinism return.
Yeah.
But is there significance to the Jewish people, to the Hebrews, that you can make a snake and you can do the albino trick? Oh, that's God. I remember. Is that a callback to Genesis? Is that why would they care that these three things are the part of the tricks that get me to believe in God?
Yeah.
Do they remind me?
Yeah.
Are they supposed to remind me of God, or?
Yeah. You're exposing how something is meant to be used and how it does end up getting used. Because all of these tricks were supposed to convey that God has chosen Moses as the leader, the prince and the ruler of the people, as that one Hebrew slave called out to Moses, who made you king over us? That's what these tricks are for, but none of these tricks are used in that way. So even the divine plan that God has given Moses to be a leader, the world has hijacked for alternative purposes. Even the miracles given to Moses are now being used to do this magic trick in Pharaoh's court, when in reality it should demonstrate his leadership to his own people. Yeah.
We also have to remember too is that we're such a we live in post-modernity and we're such rationalists, and so we think it's super normal that we're all in this room right now as we're flying through the universe and we're spinning around fast and fast and fast, and we just know how everything works, right? And so you're just like, I'm a man of science, right? And when I see something, it's there where it's magical that we're here right now. Like, it's insane that you're listening to a guy with a weird Dodger hat on. I'm sitting here, some of you have never met me before, and you're listening to me, and like, it's this insane, magical thing that we're doing right now, but we take everything for granted. The thing is that this is not at all what they believe. Like, they are people that see transcendence, they see power, they see stuff, and they probably saw like very, very wild stuff that we just don't even have a frame. We think that we are so learned and we're so smart and we understand so much, and we're so away from it. So like when they're doing these things that we would call like carny or parlor tricks, or like what I think is so fascinating is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who's like known for being like the rationalist person that wrote Sherlock Holmes, right? Like there's a rationalist. He straight up believed in like the spiritual realm and all this crazy stuff, so much so that who was it that he was fighting against? It was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle versus like another guy, and it was like, I think the guy was like a Christian guy, and that Christian guy was like super rationalist and was actually like against all like supernatural. And this Sherlock Holmes writing guy is like, no, there is stuff. And it's like so funny, of course it's like the Christian on this side, like arguing like, there's no like supernatural thing. It's like, of course we would do something like that. And so, with all of the things that we see with Jesus and all the things that we see with Yahweh and all these things, it's a really beautiful thing to, that's why Logan and I will keep on saying this, read the Bible like fiction. Like, we so want to read the Bible like a science book. It doesn't want to be read that way. It wants to be fantastical, special effects, all of the things, and you go, whoa. So you go like, Josh, was it a worldwide flood or was it a localized flood? I will drink in all of it. Give me a pint of a localized flood, or give me the dam and let it break over me. I want all of it. I will believe in all of it. And Logan will say this too. It was a cosmic flood. You're both wrong.
Cosmic flood.
but that's the thing, and that's what I want to capture the minds. Like that's why when he says things like Wes Anderson, the like reading the Bible, going in, out, this all really matters. So it matters.
It's good storytelling. It's good art.
Yes.
It's art.
It's beautiful art.
It's art before it's anything else. It's literature, a story, and poetry. Yeah. The main hermeneutic is beauty in God's world.
And we are those imagers. Like what he was saying, like there is no hands and feet. There's nothing. Like the miracle is when we, which is like the display of the computer, does the things that he asks us to do. Whoa. Like that quote that Logan just put up right here. Oops, oh, this is too big. Sorry, guys.
Teresa of Avila. Hits, doesn't it?
It won't do it. Sorry.
That's all right. Okay. The name of God. I should say this. Whenever you see all caps in your Bible, Lord. You guys notice this? This is the divine name. Yahweh. If it says God, generic. It's the word Elohim. So when you're reading, Genesis 1. In the beginning, Who created the heavens and the earth? Is it Yahweh or is it Elohim? Elohim. In the beginning, God creates the heavens and the earth. What effect does that have on me? That I'm using a generic title for God instead of an intimate title?
It's like you're gonna know more of him soon.
It's suspenseful, for sure. Who is this God that's creating everything? And also, yeah, because you're not quite sure about his character, but he seems so vast and unknowable to create the entire cosmos. You're like, who is this guy, right? And then all of a sudden in chapter 2, hello. All of a sudden in chapter 2, it's the Lord made Adam because he's in the mud and he's crafting him and he's breathing into his mouth to give him life. God makes mankind by saying him into existence because that's the kind of being he is. Yahweh, this is the kind of deity that gets down in the mud, gets his hands dirty and crafts the human. And so you'll kind of read in the Bible, every time you have this very grand, larger than life view of God, it will use this one. It'll say God did. But you get these emotional scenes where someone is talking to the face of God, and it calls him Yahweh. It says Lord, Lord, Lord. And so even the name that we call God in the Bible and how we read God's name in the Bible is a cue to intimacy. How close does he feel in this story? How are we? We did so much nerdy grammar stuff. I'm proud of you all. I am. That's the worst it's going to get. It's hard to get, yeah. What? Oh, sorry. Oh, hello. Christ has no body now but yours. No hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes through which he looks compassion on the world, or on this world. Yours are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands through which he blesses all the world. Yours are the hands, yours are the feet, yours are the eyes. You are his body. Christ has no body now on earth but yours. Let's pray. Yeah? Father, we thank you so much for your strangeness, your beauty. To know you, to figure out who you reveal yourself, takes 2,000 years and billions of Christians to talk about, to share about, to learn about. God, if you were so passively knowable, we wouldn't divide churches about you. We wouldn't separate, we wouldn't get in arguments about your theology and your goodness. Father, you are so large, so grand, that you bring up and stir up conversation at the very name. Your name is an invitation to talk in community, to ponder, to think about what it means to live your will in this world. God, we thank you for the book of Exodus and your character that you have revealed through this book. We thank you for this space to deliberate on what does that even mean for Everwell Church, for you to just be existence, to be so large that your name isn't even a noun. You can't even call it by one thing. God, we thank you so much. Amen. Outro music. Yo.
You were like, I'm proud of you guys. I am.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, this is
tired, bro.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Yo, you look tired. Oh. A lot of sun?
Yeah.
Where were you?
I was just in Newport.
Oh, no way.
Fried,
No way.
my back, everything is just
Yeah.
the first burn, kind of
Yeah.
thing, you know? And then
Yeah.
it should be smooth sailing.
Yeah, nice. I was in